third question was, have you ever thought about committing suicide? And every single kid in every single class crossed that line, and my best friend. It was probably one of the most powerful moments of my life where I was the only one standing on the other side. I just realized at that point that the issue was way bigger than anybody even thought. Yeah, and that's why we started it, is really just to help kids.
Welcome to A Curious Corner, where we unravel the stories behind our guests through the lens of curiosity. In today's episode, I am joined by Dominick Adams, who is a businessman, speaker, and a founder of the Hype Foundation. Welcome to a show, Dom. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me.
No worries. All good. Great to have you with us. Appreciate you being here today, spending the time with us at the Curious Corner. And maybe we just dive straight into it.
Let's go. Curious Corner. I love it.
Cool. My first question is, how would you describe your childhood for anyone listening who doesn't know who you are?
My childhood, probably joyful. I think that's probably how I would describe my childhood. I had a really good childhood, played a lot of different sports, played pretty much 4 sports at all time, but I just had like really good family dynamic. My parents were awesome. My extended family was awesome, and that created like a level of support that has been ingrained in me my entire life. And it has definitely made me the person I've been. My great grandparents were huge in my life, so I would say joyful. I was just a crazy, energetic kid, and I had the support around me that lifted me up.
Love that. And like I said, I know you kind of spent a lot of time playing sports as a kid, and that was like a major part. So that's cool. So I guess like transitioning from your childhood, where like say you're quite a joyous kid, into work. I know you spent like quite a number of years in a job that you hated, essentially, which must have been very challenging. So could you share a bit more about that period of your life and like what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I played college football, and that was my dream. My dream was to play NFL football, but I knew at a very, I guess, early age, because I wasn't tall, that probably wasn't going to happen. And so when I played college football, that was kind of like my dream come true. And I never really thought of anything I really wanted to do. Like I didn't want to be a doctor or like an astronaut or anything besides play college football. And I did that. And so when I came home from that, my dad was struggling in his business. He needed help. And so I just started working for him. And yeah, I hated it for 9 years. And the interesting thing is that I was talking to someone yesterday about this, is I didn't hate it. There's a lot of things I didn't like about it, and the stuff that I dealt with, and then also working for my father was an interesting dynamic in itself. But I just felt like it wasn't what I was supposed to do. Every single day I went to work, I was like, I don't think this is what I'm here to do. I don't think this is what God put me here to do. And so I think that's what fueled the I guess hate. Like it's probably the only time I use hate in my life was towards that. It just felt like I was letting myself down, I think, or letting God down, right? And so, yeah, quickly into the job, probably about 2-3 years, I got pretty good at it. And I realized that I was bringing the baggage home to my wife and my kid. My oldest son, Bo, was born at that time. And I realized I needed to be a better husband and a better father. And so what I did was I just turned to gratitude. I had to figure out a way to love my life. Basically, since I didn't like the job, I needed to love my life. And I had an amazing life. So it was pretty easy once I figured out the different ways. And for me, it was writing in a gratitude journal every day and, putting pictures in my workplace. So if I got angry or upset, I could just look at those photos and really just be pulled back into gratitude. And I feel like I really, gave my that was 9 years to my dad and for him, for his business, and grew it and was really good at what I did. And finally realized like, all right, I have the skills to go do something else. Like, why not chase my passions? And, if I fail, like I can get another job. I'm not worried about getting another job. I got pretty good confidence and belief in myself.
Nice. You mentioned about like I guess like that shift in mindset. Was that like a progressive thing, or like obviously you mentioned a gratitude journal, but like that's obviously like quite a big mentality shift for like a number of years. So
Yeah,
curious to learn
absolutely.
a bit more about that.
Yeah. So I was blessed to go to a leadership course called Rapport Leadership International that like completely changed my life. Now, the thing with going to a course like that is that you get all the skills, but you have to actually do it. Like you have to implement them in your life. And for a while, you know, I wasn't implementing into my life. So I had to figure out different ways to bring those skills that I had learned into my life. And so I'd gotten the skills that I needed from rapport. Well, then I was like, I'm not doing it. So how can I translate these different things into my life? And it was kind of just probably like a year or two journey of figuring out, what ways can I do this? Do I have different passions I need to chase on the side to just, calm the stress? And it really, just came down to gratitude and like accountability and being accountable for everything that happened in the business that I was working in, being grateful for my life and the fact that I woke up in the morning and the fact that I'm a dad and I have a wife and those types of things were kind of what cemented that. And I just did it every single day. And, what I'd like to tell people is that, you know, I wrote in a gratitude journal for 5 years, at least 5 years, probably more than that. And one of the things is that I didn't do it every single day. But if I missed a day, right, like say I wrote 5 days in a row and then the sixth day I was sick or something and I didn't write that day. Well, then the seventh day I would write 2 times. I would make up that day and I wouldn't judge myself because the goal isn't necessarily to write in that journal every day. The goal is to become more grateful. And I think that is something that we lose track of as just humans, as psychology, is we put too much pressure on ourselves and forget about the actual thing that we want to become. And, like a lot of people stress about sleep, for example. It's like, oh, I have to be on this is what it has to be. This is the schedule. And you get kind of OCD about it, but the goal isn't to become OCD about your sleep. The goal is to sleep better, or the goal is to be more grateful. And so once I realized that, like early in the journey of the gratitude journal, that really kind of catapulted me to not judge myself. And, everything else flowed in my life. Like I became better at my job. I became a better father and a husband and all those things because I was more grateful.
I love that. Um, what do you say to a person that's listening to this right now that is going through a similar struggle to what you experienced previously?
Man, I think just start. That's what I could say, or you know, probably start. And then the second thing is just really practical perspective. This is something I've been really doubling down on lately, where it's like, regardless of if I was still in that job or I was in a job that wasn't paying as much and I hated it or whatever, any situation, right? Like the fact of the matter is if you wake up, like that's a win, right? You're winning already. And then you have different stats that are like, okay, 40%, I think it's 28% of the world doesn't have clean water. Okay, like that. Okay, like I got clean water. Okay, now I have food. 300,000 people are homeless in the U.S. 1.4 million kids attempted suicide in 2021. You have these things that kind of bring you back to reality. And unfortunately, we live in a world where people are scared to call people out when they're being entitled or they're complaining. And really, it's if you have the ability to be grateful and you have those statistics or whatever, you have that perspective that's powerful. Like you almost not necessarily owe it to someone to call them out, but like, why not? And so I think when you have that perspective and you have these things, like, of course we all go through things that are ups and downs. We all have hard times, but the fact that we really did wake up is is like the most important thing. If you can just double down on that every single day, it's the reality of the fact that we get a chance. And you know it just you can be reminded of it in so many different ways. Literally last week, a man from my church was murdered and he had 7 kids. And so things like that happen and people are complaining about their Starbucks order. And so it's like, no, 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 like you guys don't understand. Like you're alive, and then you can afford a Starbucks. These are things that are gifts and privileges that we have in life that we just take for granted, and that people just take for granted waking up. And so I think when you really give someone perspective like that, and it doesn't have to come from me, right? It can come from anybody. If you mean it genuinely when you're telling someone, I mean, I feel like I have a 99% like success rate telling someone that and them not complaining back to me, because they feel guilty in some sense. And so I think just start and then become real practical and have perspective about life, because there's a lot of the world that doesn't have as good of a life as you, regardless of the situation that you're in.
Yeah, I love that. And, this is like me now speaking personally, but I found that in the past, maybe sometimes you'll be in an environment like that and you almost, I guess you're surrounded by if maybe you're seeing the negative, it's because you're surrounded by other people that are also seeing the negative, right? So you almost have to like cut off those voices and just, put the earphones in and just like listen to positivity and just, cut. There's obviously a lot of noise in the world, and just trying to cut out that external noise. And it's like the law of attraction, right? Like if you think of you're negative, then you're only going to look at things which are negative, and your brain's going to like register that.
Yeah, and 100%. And I think that just like you said, you have to eliminate people out of your life that are either negative or maybe not positive for you in different situations. That could be family, that could be directly, could be your parents, and that's hard. And like I've had conversations with my parents before when they weren't being positive, like, hey, look, like this is what I'm doing, this is my life, this is who I am, this is how I want to raise my kids, like this is what we need to be around, because this is what we want our kids to be raised like. And the second point is that it's a choice, right? Like being more grateful is a decision that you get to make. And so I think we lose track of, like, we just go through the motions in life, and really, like, you have the choices. You have the choices to be more positive. You have the choices to be more grateful. And the thing is if you're a positive person, it doesn't mean you're toxic, right? Tons of things could happen that are terrible, and you can still look at the bright side. You could still just say, like, I woke up, right? I have a house, I have a wife, I have a kid, you know, those types of things. And it's like, that is a decision that you get to make. You get to, right? A lot of people say they have to. No, you get to make that decision to be more grateful, right? It just is a decision that you get to do different things in your life. And I think we lose track of that it's a choice. Like we do have a lot of choices in this life. We are blessed that we have choices, and we're not just all ran by dictators and stuff like that. And to be grateful is a decision that you get to make every single day, in my opinion.
100%. And as you mentioned, you know, your environment is a big factor within this, and especially the environment you're raised in and brought up in as a young kid. Um, and obviously, as the founder of the Hype Foundation, you do a lot of work with young kids
Yeah.
to, you know, I guess give the kids the ingredients and the emotional intelligence and skills they need to foster a bigger, brighter future. So, maybe for those listening who don't know or aren't aware of the Hype Foundation, maybe you could give a quick, 101 on what is the Hype Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The Hype Foundation is a foundation that I started. It's on mission to empower teens to thrive by nurturing emotional intelligence, fueling positivity, and inspiring growth. And we're so committed to fostering positivity, resilience, and mental well-being among the youth. And these kids just don't know. They don't understand emotions, whether that be from their parents, whether that be from social media, whether that be from the leaders of the world, right? It starts from the highest levels of people, or whoever people look up to, whether that be their parents or us, like an influencer or a president or whoever, right? And those people lack those things. And it's a lot of fakeness that goes on in the world. And I think these kids just kind of go through the motions and they don't know what to do. And then, there's all kinds of crazy stats, statistics around committing suicide, around attempt suicide, around thinking about suicide, about anxiety and depression, and just this pressure that these kids put on each other, on themselves. And we're just on mission to really empower kids and lift them up, and to create different initiatives around that, to create a community where kids really understand the power behind these emotions and emotional intelligence, like gratitude and positivity and accountability and self-awareness, because it takes one moment for a kid that could completely transform their life. It could take one conversation of me with one kid talking about those practical perspective things I was talking to you about that could completely transform their mindset. It's just because they don't have that influence. And so I think the most powerful thing in the world is to lead by example. I think that easily is like, it's got to be the number one thing, because you can teach kids and people all kinds of stuff by just leading by example, because it's just not common, right? People's word doesn't matter anymore. They don't follow through with their actions. And that's at every level. That's not just at the highest level. That's all over the place. And there's no accountability. Nobody's calling people out because of it. Nobody's calling these parents out that don't spend time with their kids because they're afraid of something. It's like, look, like, it's pretty black and white. Your kid is dealing with some different things. You're not spending time with them, blah, blah, blah. Or your kid is addicted to social media. and his parents don't pay attention to him, those are two bad things together, right? And people want to blame social media or one specific thing, but you just can't. Like it's there's so many different variables, and there's so many different things that are exposing us. And so, the Hype Foundation is just on mission to help kids and create community and educate and positively impact. And I think leading by example is easily that number one thing for us.
Love that. As you said, lead by example. And I know that you went on some kind of like crazy 30-day, like, I guess like weight loss journey just to kind of prove to the kids, like, hey, like, if I say you can do it, like, I'm going to now go prove to you that anyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's powerful, right? Because it's showing someone like, hey, like I am who I say I am. And when you have that, when you carry that type of not really like I mean, it is confidence for sure, but it's just authenticity. It's just who I am. It's just genuine. It's like, you know, I need to be able to keep up with you. Okay, I need to lose 20, 30 pounds. Like I'm going to do it. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show you. And it's not for, I don't need flowers. I don't need roses. I don't need recognition. It's just to show you that these things are possible if you set your mind to it and you have discipline and you have all these things and you have the confidence in yourself. And that shocks kids. Most of the time it shocks kids because they're not used to it, right? These are things that the things that we are tackling are things that aren't popular, right? Positivity, not popular. Kindness, not popular. Gratitude, not cool. Like you're not cool if you talk about being grateful. And that's just crazy to me because gratitude is like everything. Positivity is incredible. And nobody knows that these, or they might know and they might just not care, but like positivity and gratitude release serotonin into your brain and all these chemicals that help you. And so, people don't know that, or they know that and they choose not to, lean into those emotions. It's like it's kind of free knowledge. We have the science. The science tells us exactly what to do to have a healthier brain and a healthier life, and we just choose not to. And that stems from so many different things at a top level.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So I obviously love the foundation. I'm a supporter of it myself, but why does the Hype Foundation exist?
So Hype Foundation exists because about 5 or 6 years ago, I used to go volunteer on some teen leadership classes, and I would go with my best friend, and we would volunteer. And it was a 2.5 day course. We probably did about 6 or 7 courses, and I think there was about 40 kids in every class. And in every class, there was one process that happened, and it was called cross the line. It was a rope that was in the middle of the class, and everybody would stand on one side except for the instructor, so including me and my best friend. And the first question would be, have you ever had sour Skittles, right? Everybody crossed the line. The second question is, have you ever done drugs, right? Maybe 50% of the class crossed the line. And the third question was, have you ever thought about committing suicide? And every single kid in every single class crossed that line, and my best friend. And so it was probably one of the most powerful moments of my life where I was the only one standing on the other side. So I was overcome with gratitude immediately, and then immediately just sadness because I got to look in the eyes of 40 to 50 kids and my best friend and just like feel that in my heart. And it's just, I just realized at that point that the issue was way bigger than anybody even thought, because you just never think, like I would never think that any of those kids would probably cross the line, even knowing them for 6 hours. And so the fact that they all crossed the line is pretty insane. And then the second thing is that, after one of those classes, I had two of these young men come up to me and tell me that I changed their life. And, when you experience something like that, when you stay truly humble, you're really just caught off guard and shocked because it's so genuine, right? It's so genuine after a course for those kids to come up and tell me that. And I just kind of realized at that point that I was gifted something. And I'm religious, so I think that God just gave me the ability to connect with teenagers and to connect with young kids and people in general. Mainly because I'm vulnerable. I'm just 100% vulnerable. Like I will pretty much an open book, probably tell anybody anything, maybe 1% of my, maybe some stuff with me and my wife, but most of the time I'm an open book. And when you are that, when you are vulnerable, kids connect to that. Right. And so then you take you have their heart and you can renovate it and you can help them. And I think it's something that's truly powerful that just isn't popular, right? It's not cool to be vulnerable, especially as a male. It is not good to open up about your feelings. But it's like, even, something over this journey that I've realized once I started the foundation was that even kids with really, really good parents don't tell their parents everything. They don't maybe feel comfortable opening up about those things to their parents. And I've had kids tell me that, like, share things with me that I was kind of shocked that they didn't share with their parents. And so that's that pressure. That's the new age of like of high school, I guess, is that kids don't even want to share things with their parents, even if they have good parents. These are like the best parents I've ever met, and these kids aren't sharing it. And so that's like that's like the thing we're tackling, is that even at a level where these kids have good parents, there's still things that they're dealing with that they don't want to talk about. And so, yeah, like, I mean, post COVID, the numbers are crazy: anxiety, depression, suicide attempt. I mean, kids feeling lonely, they don't have any friends and stuff like that. Like, it's actually crazy numbers. And yeah, and that's why we started it, is really I just want to help kids. I just tell people, like, as genuine and authentic as I can. It's like, it's God, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I want to help kids. Those four things right there, like, I don't even think about it. There's no fifth thing. Good person, be a good person, right? I just think I just know it's gonna work. I don't know how else to say it. I just know it's gonna work. I know that the kids need it, and they want to be around community, and they want to be around vulnerability, and they want to grow, and kids want to thrive together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned, like say how there's obviously like a lot of stats flying around, and I actually done a bit of research myself before this, and there's like a recent Forbes article, and it was saying how like young adults between the ages of 18 and 25 have the highest rate um, of experience like any mental health concerns within that age bracket. And then it was like since 2020, suicide's now the second leading cause of death in US children between the ages of 10 and 14, um, which just seems like crazy.
10 and 14, you know what I mean? Like, that's insane. 10 to 14. And the craziest thing, and I don't know how old you are, Ben, but I'm 29. But like, as a kid, even as a high school kid, like, I don't remember anybody talking about suicide, committing suicide. I had a friend commit suicide when we were like 19, maybe. But other than that, it wasn't common. It was not a thing. Like, I don't, and I've talked to multiple people that say the same thing, that they didn't know anybody that talked about it or did it. And so it's like, that's how rapid that it has happened, that in 10 years, less than 10 years, these numbers, 10 to 14-year-olds, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's insane. When I was 10, I probably didn't even know what that was,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm 23. So I feel like when I was leaving high school, there was like a little bit of talk around mental health. But I think it was more around like kids, or like some kids had started like the process of like self harming themselves. But, and like that's obviously very bad, but it wasn't to the scale of like suicide. So,
But I think a lot of the issue, in my opinion, is that most people are focused on that, right? That suicide. Like, how do we, there's suicide hotlines and all these things, which are incredible. We have to have those things, but the core issue is that these kids are like, let's go back. Like, once a kid is to the point where they feel that low, it is one, heartbreaking, and just incredibly difficult, right? We have to tackle it before it even gets to that point, before it gets close to that point, because the kids don't have emotional intelligence, because they're not educated on the skills that they have. Because every person, doesn't matter who you are, billionaire, millionaire, it literally doesn't matter where you come from, you battle things in your life, and you have to have skills to fall back on to help you get out of those holes. It's just the reality. It literally doesn't matter who you are. You have those battles.
mhm. Would you say that uh, mental health in general is a crisis?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Yeah. I think it's like, yes. And I just keep listening to more podcasts about health and about the brain and about so many different things that are just like, it's scary. It's really scary. Like, I think it's really, really scary. There's this one scientist that talks about dopamine and how we're so addicted to dopamine that that is the, you know, since we're on social media, we're getting dopamine so much. But anything like a text could be dopamine, right? All these things could be dopamine, that we're getting used to it. And so then your pleasure point in your brain, the pleasure senses, like they don't react because you're overloaded with dopamine. Well, then kids don't want to go do things. They don't want to go out with their friends, or they don't want to, whatever, because they feel like they're getting the dopamine at home. And it's like those things are like, listen, I played video games my entire life a lot, but like I still went outside. I still played sports. I was still active. Like you have to be able to balance it in this 100% one way to this other, it can't be like that. And like that's pretty intense hearing those things, right? Hearing a brain doctor talk about those dopamine where he's ran the test on 50,000 people. Like this isn't just like he came up with it. It's like, no, he ran it on 50,000 people. We're not supposed to be on our phones for more than 3.5 hours a day. It's like, I don't know how much I'm on my phone. I don't want to look right now, but it's pretty scary. I'm sure for a kid, it's intense, right? And so I think it is definitely a massive crisis that people are working on for sure, but it's not popular. Like it's not cool, to tackle these things. It's not like the hip thing to do, right?
Mm. I guess the reason why I asked that is because it feels like within the past 5-10 years, there's obviously like been progress made, and like there is more people do talk about it more now. But I think maybe what's the scary thing, and this is a point you raised earlier, is, and especially with COVID, is the rate of change, right? And almost with the rate of change, like that rate doesn't match the impact or like the actions that's actually happening. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, that's why it's
100%.
scary.
It's 100. It keeps going up. All the numbers are going up. There's no going down. And so that's the more scary part is, we're almost 4 years. I don't know, remember when COVID happened, but 3 or 4 years post COVID, right? Is like the numbers are not under control at all. And so how do you, something that we're really focused on is like, how do you really measure the impact? Like the impact has to be real. And I think we live in a world that people fake it to make it. And they say they impact 4 million kids when it's like, there's just no way. Like there's just I just don't believe it, because when you truly impact someone, when you really like change someone's life, when you change 100 kids' life, that should change 1,000 kids' life, because those 100 kids are that example now to help the other kids. And then those 1,000 kids will change 10,000 kids. And so we are so worried, whether that be because we have investors in a company or whatever, right? Social sentiment, that people want to fake these numbers when it's like, I personally don't care if we have 200 kids that we impact this year. Like it's got to be real. It has to be real, or else this is not going to work. And this means nothing, right? The foundation means nothing. And so it's an interesting thing that I don't love about society. And I think, that's just kind of where we're at. And I'm pretty motivated to be just as real and authentic as we can.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like society, it's easy to look at a big number on the screen and be like, oh, they're doing great things. But to your point, like underneath the layers, behind the screen, behind the scenes, what's actually happening and what is that impact?
I mean, this is so hard for me to talk about. I get like, I do my best to stay as not audacious as possible, but there's foundations with $30 million a year, and they're only in like 300 high schools, and that's just crazy to me. Like I actually just don't know, and that's nothing against that foundation. I obviously have no idea what goes on inside of that, but there's lots of money being thrown around at a lot of different places, whether that be foundations, for-profit businesses, don't matter. And there's a lot of things that people are saying, and there's a lot of numbers that aren't going down.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think impact is obviously the main one and massive, but I also think, from maybe people looking to donate to a foundation, I think it's, like like right now I could make a donation to someone, but I don't know where that money goes, right? And I think,
Yeah.
you know, I'd be much more inclined to donate if like I put the money in and then maybe it's like 12 months later and it's like, here's what your donation was able to do, right? And like helped, and then see the impact that it's had on the kids, or like say like wells, like
Yeah.
with fresh water,
You,
or like et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera.
Charity water then. Are you aware?
Yes.
Yeah. So like that would be, in my opinion, top tier. Like I think they're probably the best charity in the world, like honestly. And because of what they do and how he innovates, and Scott innovates, and how he wants to show people like, hey, this is where the money's going exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is kind of like the flagship, but a lot of people don't even know about them. You know what I mean? And so it's like people just donate to wherever because of the name or because of whatever, and they just don't know. They just, they want to feel good, which is fine too. Like, it's good to donate, but it also is like, yeah, where is all this money going? Like some crazy money, dude, crazy money that I don't know. I'm not there yet, right? I'm trying to think big with money, but
Yeah.
like it's just like where is this money going to? That is just absurd money.
Mm. I think, like I said, like in terms of charities, like Charity Water definitely sticks out to me as one of the main ones. But then my mind like also goes to from like a content creation slash documentation point of view. Like Mr. Beast has like a philanthropy channel and like will build like 100 wells in Africa, and it's like a 10-minute video and it has like 100 million like views because and like it wouldn't necessarily strike you as like the most entertaining thing, but seeing that like real world impact and the reaction and like the change that happens, like you never see that in a lot of these other organizations. So
And a lot of I feel like one of our superpowers is going to be content because of just following Gary for so long and just knowing, what works and kind of with uh Gentle Tornado brand,
mhm.
it was kind of like proof. Like, okay, consistency, authenticity, vulnerability, like this works. Like people bought into it, they love it. It's great. Like I'm grateful for that. How do we do this for the foundation? Because that's a superpower that a lot of nonprofits and a lot of businesses just don't use. And it's just free. It's like people look at it, especially in the nonprofit world, people look at it like it's a bad thing, right? It's like, no, 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 no. Like if I can, like we're in Las Vegas, but if I can blow up a social media, if I have one TikTok video go viral, that could absolutely transform the direction of our foundation. Is the fact that that is free to have that platform is just added, right? It's just like, I'm just going to post everything. Like, why not, right? I want to post everything. I want to post testimonials. I want to post like what we're doing and so many different things. And it's a lot of times people just don't either, they don't think about it, they don't prioritize it, or they just kind of demonize it.
Mhm. What do you think the fundamentals that are needed to change, I guess, like mental health in general?
Man, we're just really selfish. The world is just really, really selfish. And I think that that's a gigantic issue, right? Because that stems down, that's kind of like the top thing. And there's so many different things under that, right? Lack of kindness, not positive, because all you care about is yourself. And that is being bred every single day, whether that's social media, whether that's commercials, whether that's people you interact with. And we just have to figure out a way to not be so selfish. And I think that starts with accountability, authenticity, vulnerability, all these things that I've talked about, gratitude, calling people out. Like it's just, you have people, I don't know. You have like the best description that I like to give, and this is I guess a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take, but like you have, I don't know if you watch American football, but Patrick Mahomes, who he makes 50 million a year playing football, slams his helmet on the ground when they lose a game. Well, I don't even want to know how many kids that look up to him, which is he's an incredible football player, but there's kids that look up to him and then they see that, right? And now that's okay because he did it, when really like it's just not. And so then you have that just trickles down everywhere. You have parents that aren't accountable because they don't, I guess they're not ready to be a parent. You're never ready to be a parent, but they don't have the selflessness to put in the time to spend the time with their kids. And that is like, man, if I could tell you, it's the saddest thing I've ever seen is like 7 out of 10 times I see parents that just don't pay attention to their kids, dude. It's probably the only thing that gives me anxiety in my life is watching other parents just like completely dismiss their kids. And it's so common. It is so freaking common. And so maybe that's the solution. I don't know, but it's really selfishness, right? Whether you want to be on whatever it is, right? Like nothing, no social media platform is more important than spending time with your kids. And that is a tough thing to balance because we're forced so many different things. And so you really have to battle it, right? Like the social norm is exactly the opposite of the things that I'm saying, right? Like the social norm is to be selfish. Like if you're not selfish, it's odd. And so if we don't flip that, I don't know. You know, it's a tall task, right? It's a very, very tall task if we don't flip that, in my opinion.
For sure. How does mindfulness contribute to mental well-being, and what are some practical self-care practices that people can incorporate into their daily lives?
I think getting a consistent sleep schedule is important. I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, working out, I like working out at least 4 or 5 times a week, and that could be super minor, super easy. Um, I like cold showers. I think that's something. Meditating for a lot of people. I pray, as you know, same tomato. Reading, listening to like podcast information, learning. I like the gratitude journal, man, because it really can turn into so many different things. Like it doesn't even. When I first started the gratitude journal, it was like basically a diary. Like I probably just wrote in it every day, and I said what I was grateful for, and then I just kind of wrote what I was not happy about that day to get the feelings out. And so that can evolve into different things, right? Like you could just write it on your phone. It doesn't have to be a physical journal, but it could be something that you do that brings you that grounds you, right? And I think that's what kind of healthy habits, daily healthy habits, do for you, is to ground you and to bring you back to like a good state. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of things, but consistent sleep schedule, and whatever fuels you, right? Whatever motivates you, right? If you like listening to motivational speakers, listen to motivational speakers every single day. Like I don't, you know, that's what I would do. Like I love motivational speakers. If I need to get out of a rut, I'll listen to a motivational speaker. But that could be listening to music, right? And so I think that that journey is so interesting for every single person, and it's almost exciting. Like you get to figure that out. Just because I wrote in a gratitude journal doesn't mean you're going to write in it, but you might do something similar in a different way for yourself. And so I really think it's like looking within and figuring out different things. And then there's obviously, you know, you can fast. There's so many different meditation. Um, but there is time, right? There's time if you make it to have a healthier life and to have a better life and to have a mentally better life, but you have to prioritize it. Saying you don't have enough time is the worst excuse in the world. It's just not a thing. You could just you could wake up earlier, go to sleep later. There's so many different things, right? That is just not an excuse this day and age. Um, and I think people aren't calling people out on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the only thing I'd add is that, um, as you said, like it's a case of like trying and like tasting these different things, and it's not a case of try everything all at once because that's just never going to work. It's just like try one. If it works, if it sticks, great. If it doesn't, move on to the next one until you just like find your thing. And if it's music, motivational videos, like you said, um, and then it's like yeah, just keep like one by
Yeah,
one. Don't try to do everything at
absolutely.
once.
Oh yeah, you have to just experiment different things.
There's like I've heard this like comparison before, and it's like choose one thing, and it's kind of like learning to drive, and then like it'll just get to a point where you just do it like subconsciously, and then you don't even think about it anymore, and then like once you're at that stage, then you pick up the next thing.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And then like yeah, like so the coolest thing about what you just said is that once you master something, right now I don't need to write in a gratitude journal because I'm just grateful every day, and I say to myself what I'm grateful for at least 3 times a day. Well, now I can tackle, let's say, physical health. Maybe I want to
Mm.
be more active. Okay, well, because I've already gotten that one thing ingrained. So now my mental health is good. What's the next thing?
Or maybe it's a case of you've mastered it, and now it's just like a habit, and you just do it, and you don't even think about it. And
Yes,
then, like I say, then that energy can be spent elsewhere on fitness, for example, while
yep,
still keeping the other thing going.
100%.
So we obviously kind of like mentioned content a bit previously. So as a parent of 3 children, which I know you're like massive on your kids and your family and just being a father in general, but like, what would you tell other parents who want to raise their kids with the key ingredients, aka emotional intelligence?
Oh man, yeah, lead by example, right? If you tell your kids something and you're not doing it, that's the easiest way to fail. And I've learned that the hard way. My wife has learned that the hard way, and it's real. Like it is really real. Like that leading by example and doing those things, and then consistency. It's really about consistency and like training them. A lot of people think you have to discipline your kids, which I don't disagree with, but you almost have to train them. right? Because it's our job as parents to help them be good people. Like that is how I feel like a parent's job is to raise your kid to be a good person and to have the skills to go out into life and battle those demons that they're going to face and those ups and downs and the challenges of life. And we've come into the society that's like, you hear Gary talk about all the time, 8th place trophies and softness. And it's just like, that's also a motivation with our foundation, is that the world's not nice. I don't know where in the last 20 years that someone said that and we just completely shifted, because it's just not. Like, you go out in the real world and you're like, oh my gosh. And if you're not ready, if you're not parented properly, if you didn't have mentors in your life, like, you're going to get hit in the face and you might not be able to get back. Right. And so, yeah, I would say those things, like leading by example, being who you say you are, and following through, and discipline, like, and consistency. Sorry. I think those are like, other than that, like, it's intense, right? Having kids, like, I love my kids, and but there's days, there's hard days all the time, and they talk back and stuff. But how can you know, I would say, like, the proudest thing I am is that my kids are kind. Like, my kids are really kind, and so it's like, my kids are kind and happy. Yeah, sometimes they do some crazy stuff and act out, but those two things are there. How can we get better at the other things?
For sure. By the time this podcast goes out, you will have spent over 700 days posting daily gratitude videos. So I want to know, in a world which is obviously very fast paced, why is it so important to actively reflect and express gratitude?
Man, it's just powerful. It's just I'm just grateful,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to share that with anybody. And if that helps someone, I mean, it's helping me, right? It helps me every day to do those videos, and it helps me. And my son knows that my oldest son knows about the videos. He said what he's grateful for on some videos before, and that takes work, right? That takes, for a while we did every night, what are 3 things you're grateful for, and that took, dude, I don't 7 months for them to like catch on to what we were talking about. It's like, now they live it. Now they know the things that they're grateful for. And you have to, I mean, for me, it's really like being undeniable. I think that's something that has been a very big passion of mine for a very long time with the things that I'm pursuing, right? Like, if I'm pursuing life of gratitude and positivity and being a role model for this foundation and helping kids, well, I've done 2,000 gratitude days and gratitude day videos in a row. The metrics don't matter. The thing that matters is I've shown up every single day and been grateful, and I haven't faked it. And I think for me, because I feel like I've been blessed with this vulnerability trait that is like, just I've doubled down on it, it's showing people like it's okay. And it's also okay to have rough days and still be grateful. There's still things you can be grateful for on rough days. And I think that's why it's so important, is for the authenticity of the genuineness behind the gratitude to show. And that's just who I am all the time, but for the one video a day that I get to post, it's special. It is special to me.
Mm-hmm. I heard something recently, actually, and it was about gratitude, and it was, kind of a classic thing of someone will be driving and they'll get road rage, um, like for another driver, but then in that moment they went to like gratitude instead, and said, 3 things they're grateful for, and then at that point the dopamine from being grateful then like blocked out, the negative thoughts of someone that was driving erratically, and then like all of a sudden they weren't worried about it anymore. And I guess there's a scenario whereby that would be like the moment in someone's day and it like ruin the rest of their day. But by practicing, gratitude in that one moment, they were then like weren't phased by it and they were just like going to continue what they're doing.
Yes, and the I'm so glad you just said that, because that translates to so many different things in life, right? Like you said, where you could go home angry or you can go home happy, right? Or wherever you're going, right? And then it translates to, okay, well, let's say you get cut off when you're driving or something, and that's why you're angry. Well, that person is selfish enough to think that their time is more important than yours. So really what it turns into is then you're empathetic. Then you're like, wow, like that person's probably hurting. And then you go even deeper, right? And then it's like bullying. Like, why is bullying an issue? Bullying is an issue because kids don't understand bullying. They don't understand that when they get bullied, that kid is way worse off than them. That nobody talks about that, right? They just they demonize bullying, which isn't bullying is terrible, but kids don't understand that that kid is really, really hurting that is bullying them, and that's like that as a sentence in society, right? When you show someone kindness that is being rude to you, the look on their face, you'll never forget it. And anybody that's been kind to someone that's a jerk knows that. And that's the type of things that will change the world. But it's not being talked about, right? It's not being highlighted. It's not being highlighted in schools. Parents don't talk about it because parents are selfish, right? There's so many different things that go into it. But like you just said, dude, it's 3 things. You say what you're grateful for, it could bring you right back. It could bring you right back. And until you experience it, like I could sit here and talk for 5 hours, but you have to experience that in whatever way, you can do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sure. To round up the podcast, final question. What can we expect next from you and the Hype Foundation?
Next, oh man, so many different things. Be in schools. Teaching gratitude is our first initiative is gratitude growth, which is creating a culture around the power behind gratitude. That's going to start as soon as I finish the curriculum. And there's 2 other things that we're really focused on right now. One of them is called Hyped Huddles, which is once a month get together with community members or just community in Las Vegas with kids to just create a good environment for 6 to 7 hours a month where they can come and learn things and grow and be vulnerable and be around kids that also, want those things. And then the third thing is Hyped Fest, which is a once a quarter kind of event with like bands and food and drinks and, just a good time for kids and a healthy environment. And those things we're really focused on, man. And the dream, I think, is just to, like, if we had no budget, if we just had infinite amount of money, is to kind of have a Hyped headquarters everywhere where kids can come and learn and grow and hang out and create friendships and bonds that'll help them get through life, but in a real authentic, genuine way, and in creating soldiers of agents of change to do those things, to be at those locations, to be trained right, to create the environment for these kids. Because it really is powerful, man. It's like, I can't wait to start having the content to show people how powerful it is when you lead by example and when you really are authentic and genuine with these teenagers. There's nothing like it.
Mm-hmm. One kid at a time.
Yep, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Dom, for coming in for a conversation. If anyone listening wants to follow Dom, make sure they go to Hype Foundation on Twitter and Live Hyped on Instagram, and obviously check out the Hype Foundation as well. Massive thank you once again, and look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow us, to leave a review, and connect with us on our socials.